Democrats prepare for impeachment, new investigations are launched against President Trump, and we check the mailbag. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. Well, we have a lot to get to today. We will get to your questions in the mailbag a little bit later on. It has been a jam-packed week of not very good news for the White House. There's more not very good news for the White House on the way. Unfortunately, today we'll talk about all of that. But we begin today by reminding you that it is simply not responsible for you to rack up the credit card debt and then never pay it off or have a plan for doing so, which is why you should consolidate your credit card debt and get a lower rate and make sure that you can pay it off so you're not paying it off until you're dead. With Lending Club, you can consolidate that debt or pay off your credit cards with one fixed monthly payment. Since 2007, Lending Club has helped millions of people regain control of their finances with affordable fixed-rate personal loans. No trips to a bank, no high-interest credit cards. Just go to lendingclub.com, tell them about yourself and how much you want to borrow, pick the terms that are right for you. If you're approved, your loan is automatically deposited into your bank account in as little as a few days. Lending Club is the #1 peer-to-peer lending platform with over $35 billion in loans issued. All you have to do is go to lendingclub.com/Ben, check your rate in minutes, borrow up to $40,000. That's lendingclub.com/Ben. Again, lendingclub.com/Ben. All loans made by WebBank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. And if you're racking up those credit card debts for Christmas and you have no plan to pay them off, remember that the interest rates on those credit cards can run 20, 25, 30%. Instead of paying that, why don't you consolidate that debt, get a loan, make sure you do the responsible thing. Check it out, lendingclub.com/Ben. Check your rate in minutes and borrow up to $40,000. Okay, we begin today with Michael Cohen. So Michael Cohen is making the rounds. He is now preparing to go to jail, and also he's preparing, presumably, to sell a memoir that he will then write while he is in jail. So when he gets out, he has some sort of revenue coming out. It's amazing to see how the press treat Michael Cohen versus the way the press treated, for example, Linda Tripp way back when in 1998, 1999. So Linda Tripp, if you'll recall, was the woman who recorded phone calls with Monica Lewinsky in which Lewinsky described being pressured by the Clinton administration to change her testimony regarding her affair with Bill Clinton. And then Linda Tripp revealed these recordings, and the press treated her as just a pariah. She was a rat. She was a terrible person. How could she have taped these conversations? It was just awful. Well, now Michael Cohen is making the rounds. He is on ABC News exclusively with George Stephanopoulos, the very objective news journalist George Stephanopoulos, who once said that he and Hillary Clinton cried and held each other after the 1992 election, and is now an objective, a very objective, super objective news reporter for ABC News. Michael Cohen appears, and everybody still sees Michael Cohen as a sleazy character, but now he's being given the royal treatment in the sense that he's got the goods on President Trump and therefore must be treated with a certain baseline level of respect. Amazing how that changes based on which party the president belongs to. Well, Michael Cohen had some words to say. Here is some of what he told George Stephanopoulos in this new interview.
The country has never been more divisive, and one of the hopes that I have out of the punishment that I've received, as well as the cooperation that I have given, I will be remembered in history as helping to bring this country back together.
Yeah, good luck with that, Michael Cohen. I have a serious problem with the idea that Michael Cohen, the president's fixer, who did not believe any of the polls during 2016, that guy is going to bring the country back together. But Democrats seem to be sort of okay with this idea because whoever takes down Trump will bring the country back together. I have a new piece out in Newsweek today talking specifically about this giant lie that has been promulgated that President Trump is the great divider in chief, as though we didn't have divisions before President Trump. Every poll shows we were divided more during the Obama administration by the end than we were at the beginning on a variety of categories, including race, class, and religion. All of that happened under President Obama. That division was the cause of President Trump's election. Trump is more a result of division than a cause of division. That doesn't mean that President Trump is a unifying guy. I don't think that he is. But to pretend that President Trump is the sole cause of our division and that therefore the curative for that is Michael Cohen coming in from the wings and spouting stuff about President Trump, it's just silly, and it's the media lying to you by proxy. That wasn't all Michael Cohen had to say. He also explained that he never had lied, which is weird since he actually just pled guilty to lying. So there's that.
What do you say to people? And, there are a lot of people who would be watching who are going to be thinking, but wait a second, he lied for so long. Why should we believe him now? What's the answer to that?
What do you mean lied? Lied about what? At the Trump Organization, it's a microcosm of even just the New York real estate market. What do we lie about? It's New York real estate. Yes, it's the greatest product ever created. Is that a lie?
Well, I mean, you just sort of pled guilty to the whole perjury thing, so there's that. When people say that you're a liar, maybe it's because you pled guilty in court to lying and are now going to go to jail for 3 years because of it. So probably it's that. In any case, the really material part of what Michael Cohen had to say was in the rest of the interview. He was asked specifically whether President Trump knew that it was wrong to pay off Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, or try to pay off Karen McDougal during the campaign as part of the campaign. And Cohen said, of course. According to the New York Times, the comments were Mr. Cohen's first since he was sentenced to 3 years in prison by a federal judge on Wednesday. He pled guilty to helping to arrange payments to the two women, a violation of campaign finance law, and for lying to Congress about the duration of deliberations about a proposed Trump Tower meeting in Moscow. On Thursday, President Trump and one of his personal attorneys, Rudy Giuliani, said the president was not to be blamed for the campaign finance crimes because he trusted Cohen to know the law. Trump tweeted that out yesterday. Trump has lashed out at Cohen. On Thursday, President Trump accused Cohen of trying to embarrass him. Here's what President Trump had to say about his relationship with Michael Cohen. He says he never directed Michael Cohen to do anything wrong.
Michael Cohen says that he lied in order to protect you.
Yeah.
What's your response to that?
Let me tell you, I never directed him to do anything wrong. Whatever he did on his own. He's a lawyer. A lawyer who represents a client is supposed to do the right thing. That's why you pay them a lot of money, et cetera, et cetera. He is a lawyer. He represents a client. I never directed him to do anything incorrect or wrong.
Now, this is President Trump's chief line of defense. So to recap the charges that are now going to be brought against President Trump, probably by the Southern District of New York, there are three separate charges, or really 2.5, that are going to be brought against President Trump. The first is campaign finance violation. The case here, just to recap, because I know this stuff gets complicated, so we need to recapitulate. The case here is that President Trump worked with Cohen and pushed Cohen to pay off his former lovers in the midst of an election cycle after hearing via the National Enquirer that Stormy Daniels was looking to tell her story. The alleged crime here would be that the Daniels hush money was supposedly a campaign expenditure, given that the expenditure would not have existed irrespective of the candidate's election campaign, meaning that Trump wouldn't have paid off Stormy Daniels if it wasn't the middle of an election cycle. So how do we know that Trump would not have just paid off Daniels anyway? Well, American Media Incorporated, the parent company for the National Enquirer, has now admitted that it paid former Trump paramour Karen McDougal $150,000 in concert with a candidate's presidential campaign, and in order to ensure that McDougal did not publicize damaging allegations about the candidate before the 2016 presidential election. AMI further admitted that its principal purpose in making the payment was to suppress the woman's story so as to prevent it from influencing the election. Cohen has specifically said that the payoffs were made at President Trump's direction. President Trump's defense would be, listen, I told Michael Cohen that this thing should go away. He's a lawyer. It's his job to do the legal thing. And that's what you're hearing President Trump express on Fox News right there, is that if the law was broken, that's Michael Cohen's fault. That's not my fault. And that's a pretty good case. I mean, in order for you to violate campaign finance law, it's one of these weird areas of law where you have to have willfully done so, meaning that you have to know that you were actually violating the law when you violated the law. You can't have done it by accident, negligence. Ignorance is sort of a defense here, because you can just say my lawyer screwed it up. And that's really what Trump is saying here. Now, that brings us to the second element of purported criminality, and that would be the crime of suborning perjury. The crime of suborning perjury requires a few elements, according to the Department of Justice. One, that perjury was committed. Two, that the defendant procured the perjury corruptly, knowing, believing, or having reason to believe it to be false, and that the defendant knew, believed, or had reason to believe that the perjurer had knowledge of the falsity of his or her testimony. So Cohen is already setting up Trump for this. Cohen is saying that Trump told him to lie in his testimony before Congress. Now all he has to establish is that Trump instructed him to lie for him. So these are the two main areas of disagreement between Trump and Cohen. One, Cohen is claiming that Trump told him to lie. Trump is saying, I did not. Cohen does this sort of thing for a living. He's a shady character. I don't have to tell him to lie. He knows exactly where his bread is buttered, but it's not me, right? I mean, that's just what he does. He goes out and he lies. He says stuff. Okay, that's Trump's defense number one. Trump's defense number two on the campaign finance stuff is, I don't know anything about campaign finance law. Look at me. Do I look like an elections lawyer? That's Michael Cohen's job. If he screwed it up, he screwed it up. Well, the problem with all of this is that President Trump, in his hatred for Michael Cohen, then stepped directly into a pile of dog doo, because in the middle of this Fox News interview, he drops this little doozy about the kind of work that he had Michael Cohen doing.
Why did you hire Michael Cohen? He was known as a fixer.
I'll tell you what, first of all.
That was his title, a
very
fixer.
low-level work.
Why did you need him?
He did more public relations than he did law, but he did stuff. You'd see him on television, and he was okay on television. But years ago, many years, like 12, 13 years ago, he did me a favor. He was on a committee, and he was so responsive and so good. And I said, he's a nice guy.
Okay, so here's the problem. If you say that the lawyer who you say you relied on to get things done was just doing low-level work for you, mostly PR, it is very difficult to then claim that he was an expert lawyer you relied on for legal advice in ensuring that you were compliant with campaign finance law. The president should not have said this stuff. The president is not his own best lawyer. It turns out that in every criminal circumstance, your lawyer is your own best lawyer. This is why when you see people representing themselves on TV in criminal cases, every lawyer says, that's stupid. Okay, the key here is that you should really be quiet. Now, it also puts President Trump's lawyers in the difficult position of then having to figure out what to say next, particularly as new information emerges. So according to NBC News, President Trump was the third person in the room in August 2015 when his lawyer, Michael Cohen, and the National Enquirer publisher, David Pecker, discussed ways Pecker could help counter negative stories about Trump's relationships with women, according to NBC News. This undercuts the case that Trump normally would make that he would have spent money, no matter what the election status, on Stormy Daniels or Karen McDougal. As part of a non-prosecution agreement disclosed Wednesday by federal prosecutors, American Media Inc., the Enquirer's parent company, admitted that Pecker offered to help deal with negative stories about the presidential candidate's relationships with women by, among other things, assisting the campaign in identifying such stories so they could be purchased and their publication avoided. Trump was first identified as attending the meeting by the Wall Street Journal. So this undercuts Trump's case that he was ignorant of the campaign stuff and that it had nothing to do with the campaign. Now, in a second, we're going to get to how exactly President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, is dealing with this. Suffice it to say that his line of defense is not particularly good. Now, we will get to whether any of this is really prosecutable. We'll get to whether any of this is impeachable. We'll get to the insane number of other investigations Democrats are leaking, which actually undercuts their message that they are deeply concerned about the law and makes it seem more like a witch hunt, as President Trump has said. We'll get to all of that in just 1 second. First, let's talk about this particular blazer. Do you see this blazer? Look at this magnificent blazer. Okay, this thing, it's lightweight. It wears really easily. It's super comfortable. It's super soft, and it looks great. And not just because I have the body of a Greek god, also because this jacket is just spectacular. It's comfortable. It's stylish. It's Peter Millar. My new Peter Millar excursionist blazer. It doesn't just let me dress for success. It means that I dress for massive success every day here on this program. Peter Millar has great product, not just the blazers like this one. It also has great shirts that I wear in my off hours. They have these great khakis. Like, all their clothes from Peter Millar are just top of the line. It's not every day you buy a blazer, and I'm telling you, this excursionist blazer from Peter Millar will be a great investment for you. Head over to petermillar.com/Ben. Check out this blazer, some of my other Peter Millar favorites. There's a whole list of stuff that we've got in there. Be sure to use my link, and you'll receive free shipping and a complimentary gift, which is awesome. That's Peter Millar, MILLAR.com/Ben. That's petermillar.com/Ben. Again, I have Peter Millar khakis, I have Peter Millar shoes, I have Peter Millar shirts, and it all looks great. I mean, you just look like $1,000,000. And there's a reason that my wife prefers when I wear Peter Millar. Go check it out. petermillar.com/Ben, MILLAR.com/Ben. When you use that /Ben, you get a special deal. You get to check out my favorites, and also you get free shipping and a complimentary gift. So pretty solid deal. Okay, so Rudy Giuliani trying to come back in the wake of President Trump saying things and Michael Cohen saying things, and basically everybody gearing up for the possibility of the Southern District of New York dropping an indictment on President Trump for campaign violations, as well as suborning perjury. Those would probably be the charges, or obstruction of justice. That might be on the table as well. So here's how Rudy Giuliani is defending President Trump. It's not good. It's not a good line of defense. So he says that the campaign finance violation that Michael Cohen was sentenced for is, quote, not a big crime. Quote, nobody got killed. Nobody got robbed. This was not a big crime. Okay, that's not a good legal defense. Not a big crime is actually not a standard in law. And we are now actually, legally speaking, of the Fifth Avenue defense. Remember that President Trump said during the campaign he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and he wouldn't lose a single vote? So now apparently the mayor who is responsible for the implementation of broken windows theory in New York, which curbed crime in New York based on prosecuting small crimes, is now saying that small crimes don't matter so long as those small crimes are small enough and they aren't murder. So I guess the idea is that anything short of murdering somebody is really not a particularly big deal. Now, is it true that campaign finance violations are not enough to take down a president? Yes, it is true. Campaign finance violations are not enough to take down a president. Nobody cares about them. Everybody assumes that campaign finance is crap anyway. Nobody really thought any differently. Nobody thinks that President Trump doesn't pay off women to keep them silent. Nobody thinks that President Trump isn't who President Trump is. See, this is the thing about being President Trump, and this is why, and this will become relevant in a second when I discuss Democrats' attempts at impeachment, which is coming next. None of this changes your picture of President Trump. I don't know if there's anyone in the country who thought that President Trump isn't the kind of guy who would pay off women he slept with. Like, is there anyone who thought that? Is there anybody in the country who thought that President Trump was deeply concerned about the intricacies of campaign violations, campaign finance violations, that he was sitting there going, well, got to make sure that nobody spends $2,700. Got to make sure that nobody violates these particular campaign promises. President Trump has been Donald Trump his entire life, as it turns out. And the New York real estate business is indeed very dirty, as you heard Michael Cohen say. Because that doesn't change the image of who President Trump is, it doesn't actually change how his administration works. And so the idea that he can't proceed as president of the United States because of these crimes, well, that's just not true. And it's obviously not true. And this is the point, right? This is where the rubber really meets the road, because the next step here is going to be Democrats pushing for impeachment. You can already hear them boxing themselves in. Democrats may not want to push for impeachment. Democrats may want to maintain this controversy up until the 2020 election, but they've basically forced themselves to move on impeachment because they're now accusing President Trump openly of criminality, which means the responsibility is on them in the House to push for impeachment. So let's talk about that a little bit. Eric Swalwell is a congressional Democrat, and he says that President Trump presides over a criminal presidency, right? This is the Democrats boxing themselves in to attempting some sort of impeachment before the 2020 election.
You are now seeing more evidence than ever that Donald Trump was associated with a criminal campaign, a criminal transition, and presides today very likely over a criminal presidency. And you've seen people in his orbit who are either under investigation, have pled guilty, or are serving prison time because of their association with one or all three of those different entities.
Well, if the Democrats keep screaming criminality, they're going to have to push for impeachment. But the question is, could they credibly impeach President Trump in the House? And Democrats today who are saying, well, let's push for impeachment now. Are these impeachable crimes? So here is my answer. If this had all happened in 1995, the answer is yes. But we live in the post-Clinton era. You can separate the question of presidential decency and presidential class into BC and AC, before Clinton and after Clinton. Because before Clinton, there was basically a bipartisan consensus. If you committed a crime, you were going to be ousted. This is what happened to Richard Nixon. Republicans supported his impeachment, even though they were members of his own party. That's why he resigned in the first place. But when it came to Bill Clinton, not a single Democrat, not one in the Senate, supported his impeachment on charges that look extraordinarily like the sort of allegations that are now being made by President Trump. Clinton was impeached on obstruction and perjury based on his testimony and pressure on others regarding their testimony on Monica Lewinsky, and the Senate then acquitted him. The political lesson we all took from this was that impeachment was deemed inappropriate in cases where the president could still operate. They said, oh, well, he's got a 70% approval rating. He can still be the president. These crimes don't really go to his efficacy. Well, those same arguments now apply to President Trump. And in fact, President Trump would not have been successful in his presidential primary run if it had not been for a widespread perception that morality no longer mattered in politics, a perception that springs directly from the Clinton years. Okay, now we're going to hear from Democrats that this is different, that it's not truly the same. They're going to say the campaign finance thing is different. Clinton didn't violate purposefully campaign finance law, except for the fact that during his actual campaign in 1996, there was solid evidence that the Chinese government was trying to funnel money into his campaign. So there were serious campaign finance violations with regard to Clinton. It was called Chinagate at the time. And by the way, it's not even clear, as Rudy Giuliani sort of says here, it's not even clear that hush money payments can even fall under the rubric of campaign expenditures, particularly because President Trump could have been spending years paying off all of these women. Clinton suborned perjury. He obstructed justice about ancillary matters. That's really what people are talking about with regard to President Trump. Now, the Democrats are going to say, well, Republicans are hypocrites because Republicans voted for the impeachment of Clinton in 1998 and 1999, which, by the way, is not even completely true. A bunch of Republicans voted against conviction in the Senate. It was a Republican Senate that acquitted President Clinton in 1999. But the hue and cry by the media is going to be that Republicans are hypocrites. They voted to impeach Clinton, and now they're not voting to impeach President Trump. But here's the thing. The reality on the ground has now changed. Once one group of people violates the rules, you have obliterated the rules. Our country exists on an unspoken set of assumptions about things that we hold in common. As we have seen in virtually every area of American life, we no longer hold very many things in common. One of the things that we clearly do not hold in common and did not hold in common was our perspective of what the presidency should be. Once the Democrats violated the rules, the Republicans said, listen, we are not going to hamper ourselves by continuing to apply rules with regard to character and morality in the presidency when Democrats are pretty clearly not interested in any of that sort of stuff. We're not going to be held to account by Democrats for doing this sort of stuff. Now, do I think that in an ideal world, Republicans would still uphold that standard? Yeah, I do. But this isn't an ideal world. And the idea that Republicans are going to unilaterally disarm in the face of Democrats who now say, oh, we want to reconstitute this standard. Let's reconstitute the standard of class in office. We all know you're lying. We all know that you are not telling the truth. That if you got rid of President Trump on suborning perjury and obstruction of justice after defending Bill Clinton, we don't actually think that next time a Democrat does this stuff, you are going to support their impeachment. We think that you're only holding this standard for President Trump because you're a bunch of partisan hacks. And that being the case, we're not going to help reinstitute a standard for us that does not apply to you. There has to be a collective, mutually assured destruction that takes place. That mutually assured destruction has not been achieved. And that's why I think Republicans are not going to move against President Trump, nor do I think that they probably should, politically speaking, move against President Trump. Most likely scenario here is he's impeached by a Democratic House sometime in the next 2 years. And then he runs for re-election because he's under threat of indictment by the Southern District of New York. That is the most likely scenario in all of this. Now, President Trump has complained about all of this being a witch hunt. And there's some evidence to support him. And I want to talk about that in just a second. But first, let's talk about how you can make your watch look better. Do you see this? Do you see this magnificent timepiece that lies upon the wrist of yours truly? Do you see this? Look how classy it looks. Look how nice. Look how simple and elegant it is. Well, that is the style of movement watches. Movement watches, they're not designed to tell you how many steps you're taking in a day or how many calories you're going to lose or anything like that. They're designed to tell you the time in a minimalist fashion that looks expensive but doesn't cost you a ton of money. Movement is a really amazing success story, actually. They're a bunch of ground-up entrepreneurs who started this thing essentially from a garage, and now they sold 2 million watches worldwide. And Movement watches are all about looking good without spending $1 billion. Movement watches start at just $95. You're looking at $400 for the same quality from a traditional brand. It's got clean design, minimalist, really quality products. I've got two Movement watches, actually. My wife has one that I got her for a gift. My mom has one. My father has one. Everybody in my family has a Movement watch because they really are nice. Movement did all the hard work this holiday season. They've made awesome gift boxes and packages as well. If you need help giving the perfect gift this season, but you don't know where to start, the guys over at Movement have your back. Get 15% off today with free shipping and free returns by going to mvmt.com/Shapiro. Again, that's mvmt.com/Shapiro. Movement's launching new styles on their site all the time. mvmt.com/Shapiro. Go join the movement. Okay, so President Trump claims that this is all a big witch hunt. And to be honest with you, it looks like a little bit of a witch hunt when every single aspect of President Trump's life is being picked apart. We talked about the fact that the newly elected Attorney General in the state of New York has already said that she's going to go after members of Trump's family. She's not even going to go looking for crime. She's going to look at members of the Trump family for having committed crime, which is the definition of selective prosecution. If you're looking at someone and you are attempting to dig down on them just to uncover a crime they committed, as opposed to finding a crime and then linking it with the actual perpetrator, this is the definition of bad law enforcement. And yet this is what so many people on the left are doing. The latest example of this is apparently, according to the Wall Street Journal, federal prosecutors in Manhattan are now investigating whether President Trump's 2017 inaugural committee misspent some of the record $107 million it raised from donations. People familiar with the matter said. The criminal probe by the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office, which is in its early stages, also is examining whether some of the committee's top donors gave money in exchange for access to the incoming Trump administration, policy concessions, or to influence official administration positions, some of the people said. Giving money in exchange for political favors could run afoul of federal corruption laws. Let's be straight about this. President Trump came into office saying all of Washington, D.C. is corrupt. And he said, I myself have engaged in this corruption. Hillary Clinton came to my wedding. I paid the Clintons so that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton would come to my wedding. I would get politicians in here all the time begging me to give them money. And I'd say, okay, what can you do for me? Right? I mean, Donald Trump said this stuff during the campaign. Is anyone really under the impression, the weird misimpression, that people who donate to inaugural committees don't expect anything in return? Are we all under this weird misimpression that people just decide, oh, I like Barack Obama so much, I'm going to dump $1 million into his inauguration? Or does it mean that you're going to get an ambassadorship to the Bahamas? Everybody knows how this game works. But now we're having federal prosecutors look at the inauguration committee without presumably any evidence that anything is happening so far. It's pretty amazing. The inaugural committee hasn't been asked for records or been contacted by prosecutors, according to a lawyer close to the matter, who said, we are not aware of any evidence the investigation the Journal is reporting actually exists. But that's not stopping, apparently, the investigation from moving forward. Federal prosecutors have asked Rick Gates, a former campaign aide who served as the inaugural committee's deputy chairman, about the fund's spending and its donors, according to people familiar with the matter. So basically, they're going to now dig through every element of Trump's life in an attempt to get him. It does make it seem a lot like a witch hunt when everybody is hunting for witches. Now, It's possible they come up with some witches in the witch hunt, but that doesn't change the motivating factors underneath all of this. And that's why, if President Trump is successfully able to convey that all of this is, in fact, a big effort to get him, even if he's guilty of some of it, then maybe it doesn't hurt him quite as much as people think come 2020. Especially when the media continue to give credibility to just randos who make any allegation about the president under any circumstances. Like Mediaite today has a big piece about a former staffer on The Apprentice and current stand-up comic named Noel Castler, who claims that Donald Trump was a speed freak who snorted crushed-up Adderall. Okay, that's not the most credible sourcing, and it's not the most credible story, considering that Donald Trump is a teetotaler because his brother was an alcoholic, and apparently has gone around for years to young people and told them not to do drugs and not to do alcohol. Nonetheless, this guy who worked on The Apprentice said that he worked on some of Trump's beauty pageants during the 1990s, in which President Trump would offer girls to come up to his hotel room again, unless there's criminal activity alleged. I'm not sure what exactly the revelation is there, but the point is that no matter what the allegations are against President Trump, substantiated or not, they'll get heavy play from all the people who want to see him go. And it's Democrats in the House. Nancy Pelosi saying we're going to go after his tax returns yesterday. If President Trump could get Democrats somehow to convey that it doesn't matter, they can go after every aspect of his life and he's the victim in all of this, then he could successfully run for re-election, at least on the basis that this is a group of vindictive jerks who are trying to come after him. Nancy Pelosi looking pretty vindictive right here.
Yes, there is popular demand for the Congress to request the president's tax returns. They will have their path as we go forward. I'm sure the White House will resist, and so question is, how do we go? Where do we go from there? And the president
tax
says
returns. Okay, enough. We don't have to hear from this person. I mean, again, this idea that tax returns are also on the table. Everything's on. We all know what the real motivating factor here is. Joy Behar, who is sort of the it of the Democratic brain, and she basically spills it. She says, listen, anybody who likes Trump, anybody who supports Trump, Trump himself, family members, they should all go to jail. It's so funny to hear all these people who are very angry at people shouting lock her up about Hillary Clinton, who committed federal crimes in concealing and keeping on private servers classified information. All these same people who are livid about lock her up are saying lock everybody up. I don't like Joy Behar conveying the sort of emotional bursting forth that Democrats would really like to see here.
He has nothing to lose by speaking against truth to power about Trump. Why does he say, even if he commits a crime, it's okay?
I think there's more that's gone on behind the scenes.
Twitter.
I think favors have been done, and it's gone.
I have no idea.
He needs to go to jail, but he also won a Grammy, interestingly.
Okay, so Orrin Hatch needs to go to jail because he's nice to President Trump. There are a lot of folks in this country who are fans of President Trump, and if they get the feeling that all of this is a setup, it's going to be a problem for Democrats. And meanwhile, in other Trump world news, the ongoing search for chief of staff continues. Apparently, two of the top candidates are Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, who is responsible for a vast swath of policy inside the Trump administration, from criminal justice reform to Middle Eastern policy. He's been under a lot of fire recently for his relationship with Mohammed bin Salman, who is the de facto king of Saudi Arabia. Kushner, of course, is Ivanka Trump's husband and is very close with President Trump personally. There's been talk that he might be up for chief of staff. I think that would be a very bad move for the Trump administration. Jared already has an enormous amount of power over the policy in the Trump administration. Now, let me just make a note. I'm not for nepotism. I don't like nepotism. I don't like the idea that you're related to the president, therefore you get a position in high politics. But let's not pretend that this is unique to President Trump. This isn't whataboutism because, again, I don't think it's right that this is happening on the Republican side of the aisle. But nepotism is a bipartisan feature. Bobby Kennedy became attorney general because his brother was president of the United States at the time, which is an insane thing that was allowed to happen. To have it, I can appoint a family member to be the person overseeing the Justice Department that's supposed to oversee me. Pretty wild. Right? And then Teddy Kennedy ran for Senate on the back of his brother. And then you have the Clintons, obviously, and Hillary Clinton running on the back of being married to the president and then running for president on the back of being married to a former president. It turns out that nepotism is a bipartisan problem in the United States. Should Jared be chief of staff? No. I think, honestly, Trump shouldn't have a chief of staff. If Trump should just do what he wants to do. He's going to anyway. Trump should just appoint himself chief of staff. He should just say, no one can run this place like I can. I'm my own chief of staff. Because that's the reality anyway. When he wanted to ignore John Kelly, he just ignored John Kelly. When he wanted to ignore Reince Priebus, he just ignored Reince Priebus. Like, who cares? He should just appoint himself chief of staff, have a scheduler who's out front in his office. He can bring back the lady from the Trump organization, make her the scheduler, and then just run the thing like he wants to run the thing as a family business. The other person who they are discussing is Chris Christie, which is just beyond insane. Bringing in Chris Christie, the corruption-ridden former New Jersey governor, who most famously was sent to go get like hamburgers for President Trump on the campaign trail. Like, President Trump can't find anyone else in the United States who wants to go get him a Diet Coke and a burger. He's got to bring in Chris Christie just to serially humiliate him on national television. You remember when Chris Christie became part of the Trump campaign, and every other Trump rally was Trump pointing over to Christie and going, "Look at the lovable fat man over here. Look at him. He's so bouncy and jolly. Chris, get out of here. Go get your shine box, Chris." And that was like, I guess it'll be entertaining for a couple of years, but how that doesn't create more turmoil in the executive branch is beyond me, because Christie has his own priorities. He's at odds with a lot of current members of the administration. It's all a bit of a mess. Trump should just appoint himself chief of staff and be done with this damn thing. It's very silly. Okay, in a second, I want to get to the worst media story of the day. It really is incredible. A couple of bad media stories, actually. But first, I want to talk to you about how you can defend yourself. How can you defend yourself with the best possible armaments? Well, this is where Bravo Company Manufacturing comes in. BCM was started in a garage by a Marine vet more than 2 decades ago to build a professional-grade product that meets combat standards. Now, I'm a person who owns guns not because I go hunting. I don't. Not because I love going target shooting. It's fine. But the reason I own guns is to protect myself. BCM believes the same thing. They believe the same level of protection should be provided to every American, regardless of whether they are a private citizen or a professional. BCM is not a sporting arms company. They design, engineer, and manufacture life-saving equipment. They assume each rifle leaving their shop will be used in a life or death situation by a responsible citizen, law enforcement officer, or a soldier overseas. Each component of a BCM rifle is hand-assembled and tested by Americans to a life-saving standard. BCM feels a moral responsibility as Americans to provide tools that will not fail the user when it's not just a paper target, but somebody coming to do them harm. BCM works with leading instructors of marksmanship from top levels of America's Special Ops Forces, from Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance to U.S. Army Special Ops Forces, who can teach the skills necessary to defend yourself, your family, or others. Go check them out right now at BravoCompanyMFG.com. They are fantastic people. I've met them. They're great. Go check them out, BravoCompanyMFG.com. Find out about their products, special offers, upcoming news. Also, go check out their videos at YouTube.com/BravoCompanyUSA. Again, that's YouTube.com/BravoCompanyUSA. Fantastic guys, and their product is really first rate. Okay, we're going to get to a lot more, plus the mailbag. But first, you're going to have to go over and subscribe over at the Daily Wire. Now, we have a quick announcement here. It's pretty exciting stuff. Coming up in 2019, Young America's Foundation starts up my spring speaking tour. Okay, we are going to be kicking it off at George Washington University on January 17th. So make sure you have your leftist tears tumblers prepared. If you don't have time to get your protests ready for the event, don't fret. I'll be all over the East and West Coast, so check out yaf.org for info on when I'll be at a campus near you. I mean, so much goodness. We're going to a bunch of Gonzaga. Get ready. The administration says I'm not coming. Well, we will see about that, because that's a thing that's going to happen. Also, go subscribe right now over at Daily Wire. When you do, you get the rest of this show live, plus 2 additional hours come January of this show live. It's going to be awesome, and we have all sorts of special goodies coming up. Also, don't miss Andrew Klavan's next chapter of Another Kingdom, performed by the execrable Michael Knowles. Today, we'll be live streaming the first 15 minutes of episode 10, titled The Last Dragon, The Ballad of Nancy Pelosi. We hope you've enjoyed this season of Another Kingdom. Head on over to dailywire.com, subscribe to rewatch the full first and second seasons, and receive premium access to all upcoming content. Go check that out right now. And you get all that stuff for $9.99 a month, and for $99 a year, which is cheaper than the $9.99 a month, you get this, the very greatest in all beverage vessels, the Leftist Tears hot or cold tumbler. Look at it. Look at it. I mean, just, my goodness, the solidity of it, the magic of it, its ability to contain liquid. I mean, this, you know how good this vessel is? This vessel is so good that whatever liquid you pour into it actually takes the shape of the vessel. It's unbelievable. And it's astonishing. It's just an astonishing property of this particular beverage vessel. So go check that out right now. Also, please subscribe over YouTube and iTunes. We have all sorts of goodies coming, Sunday specials galore, all sorts of new extras that we are creating all the time. And what was that, Sonia? Oh, yeah, that's true. And we are also up for an iHeart Radio Award. This is true as well. So you should go to iHeartRadio.com and vote for us in the best news category. You can vote up to 5 times, just like you're a dead Democrat in Chicago, circa 1960. So go check that out right now. And leave us a review over at iTunes. That always helps us in the rankings. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation.